Soon, the two most important blockchains in crypto will be past Vasil and the Merge. We're already post Merge, and soon we'll be post Vasil. But crypto still has some huge, ferocious beasts to tame. One is centralization, and the other is regulation. I call them ferocious because they are like wild predators constantly lurking in the bushes just outside of your camp beyond the firelight. This morning, Ethereum woke up triumphantly only to learn that it's hard to be proof of stake and not find yourself under pressure from the crushing jaws of creeping centralization. While Cardano's architecture has allowed it to so far avoid this pitfall, the whole crypto space is going to have to figure out how to tame a regulatory beast that not even US senators seem to be able to wrangle. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss an unpleasant series of surprises for some Ethereum holders, Senator Pat Toomey calling out Gary Gensler, a Cardano wine partnership, a big wallet update that involves a Fiat Onramp, and some more Cardano metaverse news. If your first thought when you saw this image was, I've never had lion. I wonder what lion tastes like. Can you buy lion? Is it illegal? Is that like a dark web thing, or is it like horse where you can still get it in certain countries? Or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider, just think about making the selection to delegate to the army of spies stake pool, ticker AOS. By the way, I'm still on the hunt for sponsors. So if you're interested in sponsoring these videos, hit me up on Twitter at Army Spies. Today, all the little Ethereum guys woke up and it was a great day. No, it was a triumphant day because they had finally merged the beacon chain with the main chain in a way that they themselves had never been able to merge with real life non-digital women. But then Sentiment came along with some bad news to ruin their triumphant day. That bad news was all kicked off by this post. According to our Ethereum post-merge inflation dashboard, 46.15% of the proof-of-stake nodes for storing data, processing transactions, and adding new blocks can be attributed to just 2 addresses. This heavy dominance by these addresses is something to watch. And they showed you the dashboard they were referring to, and it doesn't look fantastic. Of course, Ethereum maximalists didn't take very kindly to this. What are you talking about? Almost half of our blocks are being processed by 2 nodes. This must be incorrect. So immediately, someone with the .eth name posted, "What a lazy article. These are flashbot relays. Relays are made up of tens of thousands of people." Or in other words, validators. You already know about Flashbots because we've talked about it several times on this channel. Flashbots is basically middleware meant to help manage what used to be called minor extractable value and is now euphemistically referred to as maximal extractable value. That sounds so much better than value that's being extracted from you, the user, by miners. They don't have miners anymore, so now it becomes maximal extractable value. But of course, we have to ask ourselves why we actually care about the decentralization of the validation of a blockchain. And one of the big reasons is that we don't want any one entity to be able to censor the content of the blockchain. We don't want anyone to be able to censor the ledger. That's one of the big goals of decentralization of validation. And when we go to the GitHub of Flashbots, what we see here is a hard coding of the OFAC list. They're not trying to hide it. It's right here in their open source GitHub. OFAC banned addresses. And it's the whole list that came out of Treasury as near as I can tell, it's the whole list. I haven't counted every single one, but it looks like the whole list that came out of the Department of the Treasury after the Tornado Cash sanctions. So we do have a central point of failure here. If Flashbots isn't going to process any transactions involving any of these addresses, we do have censorship of the transactions going through flashbots. But even if we ignore that particular point, the really bad news was still to come. This poster pointed out that the top 7 entities in Ethereum proof of stake were controlling over 2/3 of the stake. And he was pretty low key about it. He described that as pretty disappointing. But if you look at just Lido and Coinbase, they have a pretty tremendous amount of the delegation in the entire network. And you don't have to go too far down this list to get to 50%. In fact, to get to 50% on this chart, you just need Lido, Coinbase, and this entity to get to 49.5. That means you only need 0.5 out of this entity. So I don't know if you want to call that 3 or 3.1, but to get to 50%, it's only a factor of 3-ish in Ethereum proof of stake, which is very, very different than the situation in Cardano. If we come over here to adapools.org, you can see that you have to include all of these parties all the way over to here, from here all the way over to here. This number is always hovering somewhere sort of in the low 20s. You have to be counting over 20 different parties to get to 50% in Cardano. In Ethereum, that number is slightly over 3. We're talking about 3 versus over 20. They're not even halfway to being in the double digits, and Cardano is already over 20. This is a tremendous difference between decentralization in Cardano and decentralization in Ethereum. By the way, Ethereum people were not happy about these discoveries today. As you can see from this poll, out of the last 1,000 blocks, 420 have been built by just Lido and Coinbase. And 75% of poll respondents said this needs to change. Of course, the same poster points out that Bitcoin is not doing any better than Ethereum. Here he shows that you only need 4 entities to come to 72% of the validation power in Bitcoin. And I know some of you were probably jumping up out of your chairs during the intro when I was obviously referring to Ethereum and Cardano as the 2 most important blockchains. But here's the way I think about it. Jimmy Carter, former US president, is like 97 years old. He probably thinks he's pretty important. But if you ask him, what are you doing these days? Are you moving much? Like, do you physically move around very much? He's 97, so I'm going to guess not as much as some younger people. He's not moving around as much, not getting as many things done. He's probably getting a lot done for a 97-year-old. He seems like a pretty vigorous dude, but he's probably not getting as much done as people who are like, half a century younger. This is the same problem with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not getting much done these days. They're not really moving forward. I still own Bitcoin. I still care about Bitcoin, but they're not getting much done. They're not really moving forward in time. And that's why I call Ethereum and Cardano the 2 most important blockchains in crypto. Of course, people always love to object whenever you point out the gigantic chunk of the Ethereum proof of stake delegation that Lido controls. People love to point out, yes, but it's a DAO. Doesn't that count for decentralization? Here's the thing with Lido. I think the facts surrounding Lido make it more of a centralization risk because of all of the risks that we know attach to derivative instruments in crypto. I mean, Lido has that gigantic chunk of the delegation, not because they're a DAO. It's because they provide those staking derivatives. They allow you to do all the DeFi degen stuff while your delegation is locked up. That's why they have that's why they have the biggest chunk of all the delegation in Ethereum proof of stake. And what we've seen throughout the history of crypto, ever since we've had things we could call crypto derivatives, and we have many different types, there's always been this extra layer of risk around these crypto derivatives. A lot of the big collapses, including very recent ones, have revolved around crypto derivatives. Cardano proof of stake has been running for years now, and we still have a much greater level of decentralization than Ethereum, even on their first day. Already on their first day, they have an immense amount of centralization in their system. Cardano has been running for years and achieved a much higher level of decentralization because of certain key decisions that were made when they were laying out the architecture of Cardano's Ouroboros proof of stake system, like not going down the road of slashing. These key decisions have put us in a position where we aren't going to have to worry as much about centralization. At least nothing so far indicates that we're going to have to worry as much about centralization as Ethereum is. It's probably going to be something haunting Ethereum around every corner. If they're already this centralized on day one, it seems like in the past what we've seen is that blockchains only become more centralized over time. They're at a little bit over three entities that make up 50%. Can it even get more centralized than this? Maybe. I'm sure they're hoping not. For Cardano, the big problem's not going to be centralization. At least nothing so far indicates that it's going to be as big a problem as it is for Ethereum. But like all of the crypto space, Cardano is going to have to try to tame the beast of regulation. And it's a ferocious beast indeed when you see that even US senators don't know how to wrangle it. So here we see Senator Pat Toomey, who's definitely been an ally of crypto. I've talked about him many times on this channel. He seems to always be popping up, trying to pave the way for regulatory clarity for crypto. Here he addresses Gary Gensler directly. He says, Gary Gensler owes investors and innovators alike more clarity on how he intends to apply regulations to digital assets. And he points out, if you watch this video, he points out Gary Gensler seems to be okay with Bitcoin, but he needs to explain how and why he intends to apply the SEC's regular regulations to digital assets when they don't seem to match at all. I've talked about this before, but really what we need is a wholesale overhaul of our regulations, or even better, just a whole new set of regulations that would apply to crypto. These regulations, which were laid out in the 33 and 34 Act, which are from 1933 and 1934, they just couldn't possibly have premeditated something like crypto. It was 1933. It's too old. It's too far in the past. We need a whole new regulatory regime to apply to something as high-tech as crypto. Meanwhile, over here in Cardano, once again, nothing but blue skies and progress. We see this headline out of the Cardano Foundation. Cardano Foundation partners with Georgian National Wine Agency. We're talking wine. This is my kind of news. They say Cardano Foundation will, in collaboration with Georgia's National Wine Agency, plus the Bolnisi Winemakers Association and ScanTrust, create a solution on the Cardano blockchain to ensure the quality and authenticity of Georgian wine. The Cardano Foundation prides itself on technical integration initiatives. This collaboration will develop a creative, cost-effective, and flexible certification and traceability system, which will provide transparency and authenticity for wineries and customers from point of harvest to point of consumption. You might be aware that in certain parts of the world, counterfeiting of wine is very much a thing. I think if you watch, there have been episodes of the ADV China podcast that have actually shown the interiors of warehouses where they were counterfeiting not just wine, but something even cheaper, beer. It was still economically viable for them to counterfeit beer. I think it was like Heineken they were counterfeiting. And the wine counterfeiting is out of control in certain parts of the world. So there is a real use case here. And it looks like they're doing even more than that. Transparency and authenticity for wineries. The anti-counterfeiting stuff is obviously the authenticity piece of that, but there's also the transparency piece. And it looks like they're going to track the wine from point of harvest to point of consumption. So this is like vineyard to bottle. That'll be interesting. I think transparency in supply chain is something we haven't had in the past, really, in very many things at all. Globally. So I think that'll open up. I think if we actually had transparency in in the supply chain of all the products that we consume, people would it would probably change people's consumption patterns pretty heavily if they actually understood how those products were getting to them and where those products actually came from. Today, one of Cardano's favorite wallets, Eternl. I think people really love Eternl. It's got a lot of advanced features we don't find in a lot of other crypto wallets, especially given the EUTXO nature of Cardano. Eternl had release 1.9.2, which is packed with a whole bunch of features. There's a whole thread here about all of the technical features, but a lot of people might be most maybe surprised or interested in this one. The first feature they list, you can buy ADA via their Guardian.com integration. It's KYC mandatory, but you could use your credit card to Fiat Onramp directly into Eternl now. This could mean I have no idea what the fees look like or how good the user experience is on this Guardian.com, but having a Fiat on-ramp into such a big Cardano wallet is a pretty big deal. If the fees are reasonable, if they're like competitive with Binance and Coinbase, I think a lot of people are going to find this to be pretty convenient. And maybe to get into the Cardano ecosystem, people won't even have to go to those big centralized exchanges anymore. Not that this Guardian.com is not centralized, but might be kind of a nice change for those gigantic centralized exchanges to have a little bit of competition. We've also got some quick metaverse news today. Virtua released this Cardano Island update. It says 13th of September, but they actually released this post that contains a lot of the information from the Twitter Space AMA on the 15th. Maybe some of the most interesting information for people might be this piece down here about how the land claim event will actually work. So there was a bit of information released about how the land claim would not work by size of plots, but by rarity. And here we can see on day 1, it'll be the legendary plot owners. Day 2, they'll add the special plot owners. Day 3, rare. Day 4, uncommon. And day 5, they say everyone can claim, including owners of common plots. I have a common large plot, so I will be joining the land claim on day 5. So if everybody grabs that one piece of Cardano Island that I'm kind of aiming for, then I guess I'll get pushed out to the edge, since I will be participating on the very last day as a common plot holder. But hey, that's the roll of the dice. Virtua also told us a little bit about resources and crafting on Cardano Island. They said there'll be a wiki which will come online after the land claim event, but they did tell us that buildings you'll be able to craft will fall into 3 categories: functional, vanity, and seasonal. Seasonal structures will be like if you want to have a beach cabin, that kind of thing, where you want to extend your living space out. We will have certain windows of time when you can do those kinds of things. So we have that gamified aspect. We're going to have different types of things that you can do at different times based upon events, similar to the Fortnite season concept, with different types of activities that will be available. I think this is a really good idea for not just Cardano metaverses, obviously, but all types of crypto metaverses to embrace the season concept. I think this will be a good way to sort of create new and kind of ongoing sources of revenue to keep the metaverses running, and also to introduce new and interesting things to keep the users interested in the metaverse. They said this might also extend to things like mining events. For example, say a volcano has erupted in one of the empty zones, and anyone who's got a miner bot can go there and mine, and you won't know what resource you're going to get. It might be something new and interesting that's only available for a certain period of time. I think this is great. If you see user interest in a metaverse waning, you might all of a sudden have, a volcano explode. Now all of a sudden everyone can get obsidian, and maybe the obsidian will be very valuable. They'll be able to sell it in some kind of a marketplace or something like that. I think the season concept and kind of like events kind of spontaneously occurring will be a great way to sort of spur user activity in your metaverse. Finally, we haven't checked in with Cornucopias in a while. Since our last update, Cornucopias has debuted some more gameplay footage from the custom domes. This is kind of the bunker battle type custom dome in the, looks like the tropical paradise template, and it looks really good, really good. And the visuals and the mechanics and everything on the shooting of enemies and these little drone things that pop up out of the ground, it looks really good. It looks like a real game. It doesn't look like a blockchain game that's kind of like, existing solely for the purpose of being a blockchain game. It actually looks like a game that would be fun to play. We also got a little peek into just how much thought they're putting into the resource crafting part of the game that will kind of feed into the whole economic environment of the game. So here you can see a flow chart which encompasses everything that goes into the making of 9 different types of bread. You've got farming going on, milling, baking, and even a retail shop that would eventually sell the sandwich or bread to the end customer. So going into the bread, you've got wheat, sunflower, corn, olives, rock salt, seawater, sugar cane. You've got bees involved in making honey. You've got the corn being turned into feed to feed cows and chickens to make eggs and milk. The rock salt and the seawater go into a brine to make salt. All this could eventually go into the dough to make all these different types of bread. This is really interesting to see. They said, they're still in early stages, so a lot of this could change. But I think this shows the crazy level of thought they're putting into the whole resource crafting part of the game. Obviously, this is super ambitious, but it makes me excited to see what the economy in this game is actually going to be like when we finally get to be on the ground engaging in these kind of things. This looks super complicated, but that level of complexity could just add to the realism in the end. They also gave us a little bit of a leak of some of the artwork from their Solace Zone. This looks like it's kind of a foggy sort of pine forest with a little bit of some campfires here and there, which kind of gives us a hint not only about the aesthetics of this Cornucopias virtual world, but also of some of the activities that might be possible there. If you look at sort of just the kind of the look and feel and some of the detail in some of these trees we can see in this image, I think it bodes well for the aesthetics of Cornucopias. I'm looking forward to seeing what this world actually looks like when we finally get in there. But I hope everybody is planning for a great weekend in the Northern Hemisphere. We're kind of getting closer and closer to autumn when we no longer have these fun summer days and things start cooling off. So I hope everybody is going to make good use of the weekend. I'll try to too, and I'll talk to you soon.